if you ever struggle to say no in your business, whether it's to a client request, a last-minute meeting, or even just answering emails at all hours, you're not alone. Setting boundaries is one of the hardest but most necessary skills a business owner can develop. But when you say yes to everything, you actually end up saying no to the things that matter. So today we're going to dive into the art of saying no, how to set business boundaries that actually stick, and why enforcing them will give you more freedom, not less. Let's dive in. Are you that driven entrepreneur who believes that working harder holds the key to your dreams? Are you drowning in the day-to-day tasks, wishing you had more time to strategize and cast the vision for your business growth? Hi, I'm Donna Dubé, your guide on this entrepreneurial journey. I've walked in your worn-out shoes, burning the midnight oil, convinced that sheer hard work was the secret to success. Just one more email, one more task, until I found myself on a one-way track to burnout. But here's the twist in the tale. I discovered that success isn't just about working harder, it's about working smarter. It's about being intentional with our time. It's about steering our ship with focus, because no team, system, or automation can outperform a lack of direction. In this podcast, I'm sharing with you all the strategies for business growth that it took me years to learn. If you're ready to step out of the daily overwhelm so you can amplify your profits, then I'm ready to teach you. I believe the only limit to your business growth is the one you set for yourself. Go grab a notebook, warm up that cup of tea, and let's do this. Hello, small business owners. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that I see so many business owners struggle with. And to be honest with you, something I struggled with at the beginning of my business as well. And that's setting business boundaries. Specifically, setting them, sticking to them, and saying no without feeling like we're letting someone down. If you've ever felt guilty about telling a client that something is out of scope, or maybe hesitated to enforce your working hours, then this episode is for you. Boundaries are essential if we want to have a business that runs efficiently without running ourselves into the ground. But here's the thing that makes it tricky. Most of us weren't taught how to set boundaries, especially as women. And if there's any men out there listening, you're in this too. But as women, we're taught to be helpful, to over-deliver, and to make ourselves available. And in business, that can become a very slippery slope, where suddenly our time isn't our own anymore. And you can find yourself working late nights and shifting deadlines and answering DMs on weekends, and then wondering, why in the world do I feel so drained? So today I want to talk about how to shift that, how to build stronger boundaries, and how to make sure that people actually respect those boundaries. So imagine for a minute you're a web designer. You're totally booked out, but somehow you keep taking on extra projects. Some friends of some clients might reach out for a quick, just a quick favor, and you feel obligated to say yes. It gets to the point where you're working way more than you want with no time for yourself or your family. And you finally decide, let me take a step back and figure out what is going on. Why is this happening? And the answer is simple. It's because saying no is something that you are afraid of doing because of disappointing other people. Does it sound familiar? If it does, the first thing I recommend for you is to get clear on your priorities. What do you actually want out of your business? Is it more time with your family? Is it more space for creative work? Is it less stress? The truth is, if you don't know what you're protecting, then it's going to be really hard to enforce boundaries around that. I want your business to be working for you, not the other way around. So once you've clearly defined your priorities, the next step is identifying the red flags. Where are your time and energy getting drained? are you constantly answering emails at night? Are clients expecting immediate responses? Are meetings creeping into your focus time? Before setting boundaries, you have to pinpoint where they're currently being violated. And don't worry if this feels like a little overwhelming, one step at a time. So once you've pinpointed where the boundaries are not being respected and where they're not being withheld, then you need to set non-negotiable boundaries. Yeah, that word non-negotiable, that's a biggie. These boundaries need to be clear, they need to be firm, and easy to communicate. So things like, I only take client calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Or, I respond to emails within 24 hours on business days. Another one, any revisions beyond the agreed scope will incur an additional fee. Notice with these three examples how they're direct. I didn't over-explain, and I certainly didn't apologize. And I know for a lot of you, setting boundaries, it's easy on paper, but enforcing them is where it gets tricky. And over-explaining and apologizing is something we feel we need to do. This is not the case. You just need to be clear, firm, and direct with exactly what your boundary is. So sometimes we set a boundary and then someone pushes back, right? A client emails after hours and expects a response. Or someone asks you to just squeeze in one more thing. And this is where I have found systems become really, really helpful. One of the best ways to enforce your boundaries is to automate them so you don't have to deal with it. For example, use an autoresponder for your emails so people know when to expect a reply from you. Use a scheduling tool so that clients can only book during your set hours. And be clear and upfront in your onboarding process about how and when you communicate with clients. And if there's something that I really want you to take from this episode, it's this. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to explain why you don't work weekends, or why you do work weekends, or why you don't take last-minute calls. You don't owe anyone an apology for protecting your time. And if this is something you struggle with a little bit, try reframing it as a benefit to the client instead of it sounding like a rule. So as an example, instead of saying, I don't check emails after 6 p.m., you could say, I don't check emails after 6 p.m. so I can be fully present with my clients during working hours. You see here, it's the same boundary, but it sounds more out of service than a rule. All right, so you've set your boundaries. Someone's pushing a little bit. What do? Because you will find people will repeatedly try to push your boundaries. And sometimes it's not the intent that they're trying to do that. It's just that they want something last minute. They want something yesterday. They want something real quick. They're hoping you might be around. It's on their mind, etc. So some people are going to test your limits. If a client keeps expecting immediate responses, despite your clear policies, then it's your job to remind them. And if they keep pushing, it's your job to enforce the consequences. So maybe they have to pay a little extra for rushed work. Or maybe you decide, you know what, this person is not a good fit to continue working with. And you offboard that person professionally and have room on your calendar for someone who is a better fit. Boundaries are only as strong as your willingness to uphold them. Another trick I learned from Denise Duffield-Thomas is using an authority buffer. This is what she talks about. So she talks about having Bob, as example from accounting, as an alias for informing policies. So instead of saying, I can't approve this refund, she says, our accounting team can't approve this refund. And it just helps to give a little bit of distance and makes it easier for you to stand firm. You can do the same by blaming your scheduling tool, your policies, or even your business structure. Whatever makes it easier for you to hold that line. All right, before I wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about the art of saying no. Because saying no is more than just a skill. It's actually an art form that requires practice and intention. And for many of us, especially those who are eager to please or slightly fearful of disappointing others, saying no can feel very daunting. However, I want to tell you that mastering this art is essential for maintaining your healthy boundaries and ensuring that your business aligns with your priorities. Remember that first question I asked you? What are your priorities? It's coming back around. So before you can confidently say no, it's crucial to understand why you're saying it. Is it so you can protect your time? Are you prioritizing certain projects? Are you avoiding burnout? It's important to identify your reason because that can help you articulate your response more clearly when the time comes for you to have to decline a request. When you know your why, it becomes easier to say no without second-guessing yourself. And like any skill, saying no gets easier with practice. So start with those low-stakes scenarios, right? Maybe perhaps declining an invitation to a networking event or politely refusing to review a friend's project. And as you grow more comfortably, gradually tackle those higher-stakes situations. You can always role-play these conversations with a friend or a mentor to help you build up your confidence. The other piece of tool that I have found really helpful in this is leveraging technology and AI tools to help us in drafting a polite but professional response. You know that time when you're sitting there with a cursor and it's blinking in your email and you're just not sure how to get started? Go to AI and you can input your reason for declining a request, and then the AI can help you formulate a concise and respectful message. So as an example, you could prompt it with something like this. I want to decline a client request for additional revisions outside of our agreed scope. I'd like to express appreciation for their business while still maintaining my boundaries. Can you help me craft a response? And simple as that, it'll come up with something. You can take what you like from it, leave what you don't like from it, tweak it, and boom, you're ready to go. Something else that I have found really helpful is to ask myself a couple of questions when I'm faced with a decision about whether I want to say yes or no. And these questions help me figure out whether this request should be something I should carry out or not. So the first question is, does this align with my priorities? So obviously, if it doesn't support my goals, it's likely going to be a no, straight up. The second question, what's the opportunity cost? Consider what you might be sacrificing by saying yes. Will it take time away from a project that I'm already working on that's important to me? If it is, then it's probably a no. Am I feeling pressured? So, do I feel like I have to rush to respond? If so, take a moment, pause, and reflect. It's okay to ask for time to consider the request. You don't have to have an answer right away. And finally, is this request reasonable? So evaluate if the request is in line with your workload and your boundaries. And for me, if it's not and it feels excessive, then it's likely a no. Using these questions as a guide has really been able to help me make decisions that honor my time and my energy. And when you decide to say no, make sure you communicate your decision confidently and clearly. Again, you don't need to provide explanations or apologies. A simple, respectful response can be highly effective. So consider this sort of as a beginning. Thank you for thinking of me for this opportunity. Unfortunately, I can't commit to this right now, but I wish you all the best with your project. Clear, simple, concise. No apologies, No explanations needed. Remember, every time you say no, that opens up space for a more meaningful yes. Each time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to opportunities that align with your priorities. So embrace the freedom that comes with establishing and maintaining your boundaries, and know that you're building a business that reflects your values. Because at the end of the day, setting and reinforcing boundaries is about respecting your time and energy so you can show up fully for the things that matter most. And the best part about making these boundaries and sticking to them is that the right clients and collaborators will respect you even more for keeping your boundaries. So if someone is offended by your boundaries, they were probably never a great fit to begin with. So just let it go. All right, if this episode resonated with you, I have a couple of next steps for you. First of all, if this is something you're struggling with, setting and reinforcing your business boundaries, I want you to drop in the show notes, grab that link to book an operations strategy session where together we'll work through your priorities, we'll help you set boundaries that you can actually stick to, and help you create systems that reinforce those boundaries automatically. And if you enjoy listening to this podcast and you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks again for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you next week in the next episode. Thank you for joining me on this episode of CEO Amplify. I appreciate you being part of our thriving community of ambitious business owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, I kindly ask you to share this podcast with a friend and take a hot minute to rate and leave a review. It would mean the world to me. Your feedback helps me reach more people and continue providing valuable content. Thanks so much for your support. Keep shining, and we'll catch you on the next episode.